the legal response to crime in this country, and so I proudly support this bill.
Call Chris Farfoy.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I rise to take a call on the second reading of the Sentencing Aggravating Factors Amendment Bill and offer happy Chinese New Year to Mr Bridges as well. As has been said in this debate already, police officers and prison officers do a job that few of us would want to do. When there is danger or harm, we're probably more inclined to run away from it, but it is their job and their duty to head towards it, to protect our Kiwis, to protect our communities. It is a job which is not the highest paying job in the civil service, but it is a job that demands bravery, guts, a deft touch too with the communities when they're trying to prevent crimes with a feather rather than with a baton. In their line of duty, Mr Speaker, they can pay the ultimate price. I have a family member who is a prison guard, and I don't really like the fact that he's doing that job, but it's his choice, and I want to make sure that we take every opportunity to make sure he's safe in his job. So I think, in terms of a very personal touch, we as a Parliament have a real duty to take real measures within our powers to make sure we ensure the jobs of our police and our prison officers is as safe as possible, so they can keep our communities in peace. And in fact, we know that their jobs are becoming much more dangerous. I've read in the regulatory impact statement that in the 5 years since 2004-05 fiscal year, the serious assaults on police officers has gone up somewhere around 40%, on prison officers around 120%. So let me state quite clearly that we share the government's will to make the role of prison officers and police officers much safer, but we don't share the opinion that this bill that's going through the House at the moment will make a real difference. There is no evidence that this bill will be a real deterrent to those who take the action of attacking police and prison officers. But there is, Mr Speaker, some evidence that the judiciary is already taking into account the fact that these assaults carried out on police officers and prison officers when they are sentencing. And I'd like to just, earlier in this debate, Jonathan Young took a call and he said that we on this side of the House thought this bill was unimportant. Well, he's quite wrong. It is very important. And it's our role to sit here, to stand here in this Parliament and talk about and debate about the issue to make sure that we're making a real difference at the front line. So we do think this legislation is important. That's why we're saying that we will support it, but we do have some serious reservations with it. Mr Speaker, we don't think the bill goes far enough to tackle the real cause of these attacks that are happening on our prison and police officers. I think Leanne Dalzell mentioned it yesterday during the same debate that we should be looking at alcohol reform to make sure our police officers aren't getting into these situations where they are being attacked, because I'm sure that the taking of drugs and the use of alcohol is a big factor in when our police officers are being attacked. Jonathan Young said that he wanted that, in one breath, that the government wants to send a signal, but in another breath he said the attackers have no regard for the rule of law at all. So that doesn't quite marry up in my opinion. If he thinks these guys are going to completely disregard the rule of law, bringing in this bill isn't going to change their behaviour. So we think that he's made our argument for us. Will it be a meaningful deterrent? We don't think so. What we do need to do is make sure we are addressing the root problem and preventing the situations where officers get into a situation where they could be assaulted. Mr Young also quoted a case from the Police Association's Police News December issue. It was around an incident involving in Christchurch where 2 police officers got shot, and unfortunately a police dog got killed. Gage was killed in July 2010, and Christopher Graham Smith, the gunman, was sentenced to 14 years imprisonment for his reckless attack on the police officers and the dog. Smith was handed a non-parole term of 7 years, meaning he will have to serve half his sentence before being considered for parole. Mr Speaker, I believe that when we're talking about sentences of this length in 14 years, someone is considered for parole after a third of that term. So we think that, that in this case the judiciary has actually taken action. They've said you've attacked 2 police officers, you've killed a police dog, and that they've made that a mitigating factor when the sentence has been handed down. And the judge in this case said that Mr Smith had offended against people who were protecting the community, and he had not expressed enough remorse to warrant reducing his sentence when he tried to appeal it, I believe. So the judiciary is already taking action when people are presented in our courts who have attacked our police officers, who have attacked our prison officers, and they're making sure that they're sending the signal that the government wants to send at the moment to the community, saying that these people are the guards of the community. You've attacked them. We're sending the signal that this is not good enough, and you will be punished harsher than an attack on a normal citizen. Mr Speaker, so I think from that example we can have confidence that our judiciary is taking action. We only had, I believe, and I'll stand to be corrected here, one case of a prison officer who has been killed in the line of duty, and that was Jason Palmer, who was killed at Spring Hill Prison in May 2010. He was killed with a single punch, felled by an inmate, Latu Kepu. For the killing, Kepu was sentenced to 6 years and 4 months in jail, on top of the nearly 3 years he was serving for another crime, and Kepu appealed the sentence, saying it was manifestly excessive, but our Court of Appeal disagreed. The three judges in that case said that the sentences imposed in these cases must demonstrate to other prisoners that the courts would not tolerate unprovoked attacks on prison officers, and that Kepu's offending had the seriously aggravating factor that there was deliberate and premeditated attack on a prison officer who was carrying out his duties within a prison environment. Mr Speaker, that's another case where our judiciary is already doing the job of what the government has is wanting to set out in this bill. Our judiciary is already taking this action. So while we do support this bill, because we want to make sure we're standing next to our prison officers and police officers, we don't think that this bill does enough in terms of making any real meaningful difference to make sure that our prison officers and our police officers are as safe as they possibly can be. So where does that leave us? We all agree on one thing, that we want to make sure that our prison officers and our police officers, who are doing a job that none of us would probably want to do, are looking after the worst in society, making sure that those the worst in society who are incarcerated are rehabilitating themselves in trying conditions. But this bill, I don't think, and our party certainly doesn't think, is going to make any difference to making sure that those people who put themselves in harm's way to protect us is going to make any real difference. So I hope that while this bill is going to go through, and we will support it and it will become law, that at some stage we can actually get our heads together to make sure we're making a real difference. Because sure, there's politics involved in this, but there's also the safety of people on our front line who don't get paid as much as us to do a job that is much worse than the job that we have. Mr Speaker, we support this bill to the next stage.
Mr Speaker.
Louise Upston.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.